New Seattle Seahawks head coach Mike McDonald made a statement this week to the effect that Geno Smith is going to be the starting quarterback for 2024 for the Seattle Seahawks, and there will be, quote, no real competition for that position. And to any thinking Seahawks fan, that is one of the most alarming statements you could possibly hear. Why? Because Geno Smith is not a unicorn. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Seattle Seahawk Boys live stream today. We're going to talk about the Seahawks quarterback situation and really the complete disaster they have made of their roster so far. And why? Why do so many in Seahawks Twitter land and Seahawks podcast land? Why are you satisfied with the situation at quarterback, and what do you not see about it that alarms you? Because it totally alarms me. Well, this whole thing started this week when Seattle Seahawks head coach Mike McDonald made some statements. He was in an interview talking about Geno Smith, and what he said was flat out. Tom Pelissero asked him, and not Pelissero, Seahawks retard Nelson. Tom Pelissero said, "Does Mike McDonald expect a quarterback competition? I don't. I've talked to Geno about it, very confident in Geno. Geno is going to be our starter. Sam knows he's going to be our backup, but Sam is a great young player, and he's got a really bright future that we believe in." Now, they are completely clueless. Don't know what happened there about what it takes to win Super Bowls in the NFL, which is an elite quarterback who can make big plays. Now, I just got into a little bit of a Twitter debate this morning. Some people were pointing out to me, well, the two teams that were in the Super Bowl were the top two defenses in the NFL. And the defenses are what got them there. And they played, a relatively low scoring game, which it really wasn't. And my response is, yeah. And the guy who broke one of those two defenses was Patrick Mahomes, using his arm, using his legs, using his coach's brilliant offensive scheming. He broke that defense. So defense doesn't win championships anymore. Position players don't win championships anymore. Tyreek Hill is not going to be the reason you win a championship. It's the quarterback. And if anything, the quarterback is more important now than it was 10, 15, 20, 25, or 60 years ago, the last time the 49ers won a Super Bowl. So that is a reality, and a reality that we can't just Seahawks fandom just can't seem to face. The only guy out there who has a brain on this subject is Rob Staten. But even Rob has simply caved into the idea that the Seahawks are not going to take a quarterback in the draft this year. They certainly didn't trade for one of any significance. And it's just not going to happen. They're going to have to come up with some plan to do it next year. There's nothing next year. The only quarterback out there worth taking next year is Quinn Ewers of Texas. Everybody else that they take will be not as good as the 7 guys they could have had this year that have higher ceilings, more upside than Geno Smith. And no, Sam Howell was not among that list. The list is Justin Fields, Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, and actually it's 8 because we're talking about the draftable guys. Spencer Rattler. These guys all have the potential to be better than Geno Smith. All of them. And what we're going to talk about in this stream today is why the Seahawks need to get one of them out of this draft, why that needs to be their absolute priority. Now, a lot of people say that, the Seahawks priority should be the position players. Oh, you build a great team and then you go and get an average quarterback like Nick Foles or Trent Dilfer or Joe Flacco, and you go win a Super Bowl. Well, that's worked 3 or 4 times in the last 25 years. Brad Johnson, the aforementioned Nick Foles, Trent Dilfer, who was replaced immediately, and Joe Flacco. Everybody else was an elite quarterback. Tom Brady may have been drafted 199th, but he was an elite superstar quarterback. Russell Wilson was and is an elite superstar quarterback. Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, taken first overall. Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, taken first overall. Jalen Hurts, high second round pick or 50s second round pick. You have to pick a quarterback high to get one who's good enough to win you a Super Bowl in the modern era. Why? Because teams are looking for them now. They know what they're looking for. They're looking for the mobile guy who can be taught to throw. People like Lamar Jackson, who hasn't won one yet, but I think it's going to come. So all I see, though, on the blogosphere and on Seahawks YouTube and Seahawks Twitter, all I see is the usual suspects, dumb shit damn Veens, who, if you hooked his personality up to an EKG machine, it would be a straight line. Seahawks retard Nelson, Hawk Blogger, Jeff Simmons. All they talk about is position players. Oh, well, yeah. Oh, if we could get Jared Verse at 16, oh my God, I'd turn the card in right away. Why? Or we really, really need an offensive guard. We really got to go get an offensive guard. Well, okay. Do we? It's a good question. But that's all we've done for the last 2 years. March 8th, 2022, a day that will live in infamy, is the day that they traded Russell Wilson away, their Hall of Fame franchise quarterback who every year he was playing and every year he was healthy gave you a chance to win the Super Bowl because he had elite Super Bowl winning talents. His arm, his accuracy, his scrambling ability, which, by the way, is still there. Even at 34, he's still a scrambler. He can still get around. And if he was lighter weight, he could be even more mobile than he was. The Seahawks asked him in 2019 to drop some weight so he'd be quicker. He said no. He said, until you draft some guys that can block for me and give me some time to throw the ball, I'm going to have to stay bulked up to be able to take the hits that you guys keep letting me take. That was one of the things that separated the Seahawks. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. And who can blame him for that? So let's think about this. Is drafting a quarterback with our first round pick, either at 16 or ideally trade down to the mid 20s and pick one of these quarterbacks, because we've already lost Justin Fields, is that a better option for the chances of the Seahawks being back in the Super Bowl in the next 3 to 4 years? Or is just drafting another position player a better call? It's a good question. Let's look at it. First of all, some people are going to say, well, we've got Sam Howell. You know, we went and traded for a young quarterback. We don't need another quarterback. Okay, I'm going to go back again and say, have you seen Sam Howell's interceptions? If you haven't, go to YouTube, type in Sam Howell interceptions 2023. They are some of the worst throws you will ever see, some of the poorest decisions you will ever see. Sam Howell has some physical tools, but his decision making, his accuracy is terrible. It's beyond terrible. And the problem is, let's say that lurking underneath there is a young player who, if he's surrounded by talent and gets good coaching, which he clearly has not gotten in Washington, D.C. with the Redskins. Let's say that there's a player lurking in there that could be a good quarterback, maybe even a Super Bowl winning quarterback. It's going to take him a long time to get there. They only have him under contract for 2 more years. And they're going to have to pay him next off season. Otherwise, he's going to go into free agency. He's not going to accept a contract offer. They're going to have to pay him something more than they're paying him. He's not going to play in 2025 for $1.1 million. And he has to spend the next year unlearning all of the wrong lessons he has learned in the last 2 years. So that's a huge investment. In fact, I would argue that an unscarred rookie quarterback with better than Baker Mayfield talents, like, oh, I don't know, Spencer Rattler, it's better to invest that year in him than it is a reclamation project like Sam Howell. And here's another thing: Sam Howell is the backup. Then why'd you trade for him? Why did you trade the equivalent of a third round pick for a guy who's not good enough to beat out Geno Smith? You traded out of the third into the fourth and out of the fifth into the sixth, fourth into the fifth. I forget which one it was. It was too much. The points is equivalent to a late third round pick. If you are in your third year and you can't beat out Geno Smith for the starting job, surrounded by all the talent on the Seahawks team, you're not good enough. In fact, you might suck. So stop deluding yourselves that Sam Howell is some kind of answer here. He is not. So let's go back to the other theory. Let's go back. I see all these mock drafts from all these guys that people are listening to, believe it or not. And all I hear is, well, we can get a guard, we can get a center, we can get a linebacker, we can get this safety here, we can get this defensive tackle, or we can get this edge guy. Well, okay. Do the Seahawks really, really need any edge guys? Do they need a guard? These are good questions to which there haven't been really good answers. So let's slide over to the Seahawks depth chart. Let's slide over here and take a look at it. You got Sam Howell and Geno Smith. On the offensive line, here's your starters. You've got Charles Cross. You've got Abe Lucas, assuming he's healthy. You've got Anthony Bradford. But you're missing the fifth starter, according to most people. They said, well, you don't have a left guard. Well, yeah, you do. George Fant was signed for about $9 million. George Fant can be a starter. He's been a starter in his league. He's been a starter at right tackle. He's been a starter at left tackle. He's made big money. He's played a little guard. So the fact is they have 5 starters. They have Olu Oluwatimi at center. They have Anthony Bradford at one guard. They have either Abraham Lucas or George Fant at the other guard because they might move Lucas inside because of his knee, and then you play Fant at right tackle. They have 5 starters. They signed Tremaine Ankrum as a backup at guard. They signed Nick Harris as a backup at center. And, they still have Stone Forsythe as a backup at tackle. So do they need to draft an offensive lineman? Yes. Do they need to draft one in the first, second, or third round? No. You're drafting young backup guys with upside at those 5 positions, any one of them, preferably inside, I think, who can slide on in 2 or 3 years. And John Schneider has expressed that he doesn't like to spend high draft picks or big money on offensive guards. That may be a smokescreen, but we take him at his word for the moment. Now let's look at all of the defensive the edge guys. So, if Jared Verse was there, I'd run that pick right up. My question is why? Look at the edge guys we have. Uchenna Nwosu spent big money on him in free agency. Gave him a contract extension. First year here, he has 10 sacks. What's wrong with 10 sacks? Coming off a knee injury, but he had 10 sacks for us. Boye Mafe, drafted in the second round with one of the Russell Wilson picks. 9 sacks last year, his second year. He's coming on. He's a 9-sack-a-year guy. Darrell Taylor, drafted a few years ago, 2020. Traded up for him. His top year is 9 sacks. Had 5.6 or 6.5 last year. Dropped off a little bit. But he's shown he can get 9 sacks. And you drafted in the second round, around pick 40 last year, you drafted Derek Hall, an edge guy who barely played last year, didn't generate any sacks, but who the Seahawks said has a first-round talent. So in your edge guys already, you have big free agency money for Uchenna Nwosu, who I believe was the second-round pick. And you have three other second round picks, high second round picks, guys taken in the top 50 at the edge position, who have at least three of those four guys have shown they can average 9 or 10 sacks a year, put out 9 or 10 sacks a year. That's 30 to 40 sacks out of that group of four guys, assuming Derek Hall comes along and does something this year. What do you need an edge guy for? Why do you need to draft one high? The answer is you don't. So I don't care if Jared Verse is staring at you at 16 or whoever you really like at that position, Dallas Turner or whatever his name is. Trade out of the pick. Give him to somebody else who wants him because we don't need him. Nor do we need an offensive guard high. Now, the other part of this theory that's completely whacked out is that somehow we're going to get to a Super Bowl by continuing to draft position players. Well, since that day that will live in infamy, when we traded Russell Wilson, that's all we've done. We haven't drafted a single quarterback, despite multiple opportunities to do so. Now, why is March 8th, 2022 a day that will live in infamy? Because we traded away our Hall of Fame franchise quarterback, who he was declining. No, he was injured. His last two seasons with the Seahawks, he threw 65 touchdown passes against only 19 interceptions. He was playing spectacular before his throwing hand got completely destroyed by Aaron Donald, who probably wouldn't have even been in a position to have Russ's hand hit him on the helmet if we'd have drafted fucking Creed Humphrey instead of D. Eskridge, who's a stiff. But we didn't do that because it's Pete Carroll and John Schneider. So instead, the reason why it's a day that will live in infamy is because they got rid of their franchise quarterback, traded him away, and had no plan to replace him. How do we know they've had no plan to replace him? Because they haven't done anything to replace him. Even if they had taken Sam Howell, who I think stinks, they would have at least been saying, we're going to try to get a young quarterback in here with some talent. So people argue that, you can't reach for a quarterback. Well, all players can be reaches. Quarterbacks are the most important position on the football field, period. And I don't care what anybody says. This idea that you can build a roster and then go find, an above average quarterback and win a Super Bowl again, it's crackpot stuff. It just doesn't add up anymore. You have to have a quarterback with elite talents. So in order to do that, you have to draft one with some elite traits, whether it's a big arm, super accuracy, great mobility, running ability, smarts, playmaking ability, terrific footwork. You succeed on exactly 0% of the chances that you never take. And the Seattle Seahawks have not taken a single chance on a quarterback. Why? Partly because Pete Carroll was delusional. And John Schneider maybe along with him. I used to think it was just Pete. Now I think it was both Pete and John. They thought this team was a contender. They thought Geno Smith was good enough to get him over the hump. Geno is so much better than we thought he was going to be, but he's clearly not good enough to get him over the hump. He's 0-4 against the 49ers, the team we have to beat to get into the playoffs in the Super Bowl. Russell Wilson was 17-5, and two of those losses were penalties and a fluke. So Russ, in reality, was more like 19-3 against the 49ers in his career. He dominated them. And since then, we haven't beaten the 49ers. We're 0-5. Drew Lock started one of the games. So to pretend that without a quarterback, we're going to get past the 49ers is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. So let's look at what we've done with all these draft picks. The worst part about the day that will live in infamy is that you didn't have a plan to replace him, followed by you pretty much squandered most of the draft picks and the players you got for him. You pretty much squandered them. So let's go back and take a look at the 2022 Seattle Seahawks draft. And you go through it, and we got this Russell Wilson trade from the Broncos. Let's see if we got who do we get out of this? We got Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant. Noah Fant is still with the team. Shelby Harris is gone. Drew Lock is gone after two not super exciting seasons. So let's take a look at who they've got. They got Charles Cross, high, ninth pick in the draft, average starter. Boye Mafe, 9 sacks last year, has the potential to be an above average starter, but right now, slightly above average starter. Kenneth Walker III, above average starter, good player, can't stay healthy, has issues. Abraham Lucas, who, by the way, I will remind you, Rob Staten said was a first round pick, played like a first round pick as a rookie, had injury problems, terrific pick. Kobe Bryant, back of the roster nickelback, who's probably not going to make the team this year. Tariq Woolen went to the Pro Bowl. His first year, terrible second year. Tyreek Smith hasn't done anything. Bo Melton hasn't done anything. Derek Young hasn't done anything. So when you look at the position players we took in 2023, we got four contributors. We got 4 contributors, 5 actually with Woolen. So we did a pretty good job in 2022, but none of them are stars. None of them are star players. Kenneth Walker III is a very good back. He's the best of that group. But is he top 5 at his position at running back? No. Is he top 10? No. Top 15 probably. But he can't stay healthy. So with all these position players, you'd think we would be better, but we're really not. Now here's the other thing. Let's go to 2020. Let's go to 2023. 2023, we got Devon Witherspoon, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Derek Hall, Zach Charbonnet, Anthony Bradford, Cameron Young, Mike Morris, Oli Oluwatimi, Jarek Reed, Kenny McIntosh. Devon Witherspoon, above average starter, went to the Pro Bowl as a rookie. Caution, so did Tariq Woolen 2 years ago. Didn't do much last year. Is he top 5 or top 10 at his position? Top 10 probably. The Seahawks only have 2 star players, Devon Witherspoon and DK Metcalf. Everybody else is above average or below average. Jackson Smith-Njigba, decent rookie season. Nothing special. Derek Hall didn't really play. Zach Charbonnet played, productive, good complimentary back. Anthony Bradford, below average starter. Starter quality, but average. Let's call him an average starter. Cameron Young didn't play. Mike Morris didn't play. Oli Oluwatimi didn't play. Going to get a chance to start at center this year. Jarek Reed, Kenny McIntosh. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go back to 2022. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 position players this team has drafted in the last 2 years. One of whom, Devon Witherspoon, appears to have star quality. Others still have some potential, but you've drafted 19 new position players. That's almost an entire starting team on both sides of the ball, which is 22 players, by the way. Explain to me again how drafting more position players like this, hit and miss guys, is going to make this team a Super Bowl contender in 2 or 3 years compared to taking a quarterback who has the potential to be a top 10 NFL starter, let's say. Let's say that potential exists. They're not. They're not going to matter. Then you get the argument, well, they never had a chance to get a quarterback. Yes, they did. That's a load of BS. Let's go to the 2022 NFL draft. Let's take a look at the 2022 NFL draft and where the Seattle Seahawks were in that situation. Well, let's see. Our first pick was the 9th overall selection. We took Charles Cross. Hasn't made a Pro Bowl yet. Average starter, but a solid left tackle. Then our next pick, we had 2 picks in the second round. We did a pretty good job here. We got Boye Mafe and Kenneth Walker, both contributors, both starters, both good players. But Injury problems for Walker. Mafe had 9 sacks, 8 sacks the first half of the season, 8 or 9, 10 games. Didn't do anything the last 5 or 6, just disappeared. Now, that may have been due to other issues. So the top quarterbacks in this draft were pretty much non-existent. There really weren't any quarterbacks that anybody was excited about high in the 2022 draft. So you can't really blame the Seahawks. But the Seahawks are on the record. John Schneider says, "Oh, we loved Sam Howell. We love Sam Howell." Sam Howell went in the 5th round. Where is he? Where is Sam Howell? Yeah, first pick in the 5th round. You loved him, but you didn't love him more. You didn't love him more than Kobe Bryant, a back of the roster nickelback who's done almost nothing in his career. Let's take. Does he have an interception? No, doesn't have a defensive back with no interceptions for his career. Kobe Bryant. So the reason you don't have Sam Howell on your roster is because you valued a back of the roster 45 to 53 roster spot nickelback who doesn't make plays more than you valued Sam Howell. You could have had right here. And maybe he'd be a better player today if he'd gotten some decent coaching like Geno's been getting and Drew Lock got for a couple of years. Then, you went down to the 5th round and you could have had not Sam Howell, but you could have had Brock Purdy, who's better than Sam Howell and led his team to the Super Bowl and played terrific. And don't give me the system quarterback bullshit. He's playing for a really good offensive coach. And he's got really good players around him, and he would have had really good players around him here in Seattle too. But you took Tariq Woolen. He went to the Pro Bowl his first year, dropped off dramatically in his second year. Let's hope he gets his form back. Nope, didn't want to take him because that makes sense. But then you picked Tyreek Smith. Who? Yeah. Could have had Brock Purdy, but no, didn't want to bother. Didn't want to even bother with a quarterback. Let's go to the 6th round. Who did we get in the 6th round? Well, we didn't have one. But we had a couple of 7th round picks, right? Oh, here's one. Bo Melton. Anybody know where Bo Melton is right now? Is he on the roster? And Derek Young. Anybody know where Derek Young is? And we skipped drafting Brock Purdy. Now, who is Brock Purdy? Brock Purdy is a 2023 Pro Bowl quarterback with a 68.7% completion percentage, 44 touchdowns and 15 interceptions in his career, winning record, been to a Super Bowl, and 5,654 passing yards, and a passer rating, which does matter, of 111.4. We didn't want that guy, even though we had just traded away our franchise quarterback. We thought Geno Smith was better. And Geno did have a good year in 2022. So don't tell me we didn't have a chance to draft a quarterback. Then comes 2023. And wow, what happened in 2023? Well, certain people like Mike Barra, Seahawk boy Mike, and Rob Staten were screaming that the Seahawks needed to take a quarterback because they had the juice to trade up if they wanted to. The first pick in the draft was traded by the Chicago Bears to Carolina in exchange for Carolina's first round pick, wide receiver DJ Moore, and first and second round selections, 2024 first rounder and a 2025 second rounder. So the Seahawks, the picks that were traded were actually, well, let's go back. The picks that were traded were 9 and 9 and 32. No, 9 and where is the pick? They traded their 2024 first rounder, which is now the first overall pick of the draft, which the Bears are going to use. The Seahawks could have traded them 5 and 20 and their 2024 first round pick, which is going to be number 16. That adds up to more points than what the Bears traded. Depends on how you value DJ Moore. Usually, when a player is traded, his value is agreed upon in a round. And in terms of the point system, he's mid range points. So 16 points. The points of the 16th pick. So the Seahawks could have traded those 3 first round picks and a 2025 second if you had to, and taken CJ Stroud. Now, don't call this, somebody was trying to accuse me of hindsight. I was on CJ Stroud as QB1, as the number 1 overall pick in the draft, all the way through the draft process last year. Go back and look at my Twitter, Mike Barra 333, my previous Twitter, my personal Twitter, all over it. CJ Stroud was the guy I wanted. If I'd been the Seahawks, if I'd been the owner, I would have forced the trade. We would have gone up there and gotten the best rookie quarterback in the last 25 to 50 years. He had the best rookie season of any quarterback I think I've ever seen, including Dan Marino. Instead, we have a Pro Bowl corner, a wide receiver with some potential, but who's not as good as 5th round pick Puka Nacua. We passed on him. Okay, so, don't give me this shit, though, that we didn't have the juice to go get him or it would have cost too much. That's not too much. Who would you rather have right now? Devon Weatherspoon, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and whoever we're going to take at 16, and some guy you don't even know in 2025 in a second round. Let's say that was the package. Or CJ Stroud. And if you answer anything but CJ Stroud, you're too stupid to be on my live stream, so get off. Obviously, CJ Stroud. So what other opportunities does the Seahawks have? Well, at 5, Young, Stroud, Anderson, and Anthony Richardson were all gone. And why did this happen? Because the teams at the top of the draft needed quarterbacks. And the Seahawks deluded themselves into thinking they didn't need a quarterback because Geno Smith had a good 2022 season. They should have known better, and that's where we're going to get into Geno not being a unicorn, and we'll tell you why. Teams are not going to wait on quarterbacks anymore. If they see a guy who has some first-round potential, some first-round trait, they're going to take him, which is why I think in this year's draft, none of the quarterbacks will be left by the time we get to our 16th pick except one, who I think is good enough. So at 5, who could we have taken? Well, there was another guy ranked among the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks. His name was Will Levis. And Will Levis turned out to have a really excellent rookie season. He didn't play that much. He was on a team with not a lot of talent. But he threw for almost 2,000 yards in just a few games, 8 or 9 games. Almost a 60% completion percentage. 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Touchdown-interception ratio 2-to-1 as a rookie. That's crucial. And a passer rating of 84.2. For a partial rookie season, that's really good. And let's also factor in the fact that Will Levis has so much more upside potential than that. Didn't have any players around him in his senior year at Kentucky and wasn't surrounded by very many good players in Tennessee. Put him on the Seahawks, he's going to put up better numbers than that. And the Seahawks are going to have a future. The Seahawks are going to have a Josh Allen physical talent that they can coach up and put other good players around. But we passed on that. Now we're going to get to 2024. And I think it looks like we're going to pass on it again for some more of these position players who are mid. At 16, we're going to get maybe an elite player that slides to us, but an elite position player. We're not going to get one of the elite quarterbacks. Carolina's taking Caleb Williams. The Redskins are taking Jaden Daniels. New England is taking Drake May. I think J.J. McCarthy gets traded up for somewhere in this range. Bo Nix goes to Denver. The Vikings trade up to get J.J. McCarthy. Bo Nix goes to Denver, and I don't see Michael Penix getting past Las Vegas, getting past the Raiders. He has Raider written all over him. And teams after last year understand you have to have a quarterback to win a Super Bowl. You have to have an elite quarterback, a quarterback with elite traits. They're not waiting. They are not going to wait. So we're going to be stuck in no man's land at 16. And we'll talk about what we're going to do in a minute. But the point that everybody wants to make with me is, well, what's wrong with Geno Smith? Geno is really good. He had a great season in 2022. The problem with Geno Smith is that Geno Smith is not a unicorn. The history of the NFL is replete with guys, journeyman quarterbacks who played more than 10 years, who were past the age of 30, who had a spectacular, singular, spectacular career year in their 30s. None of them ever repeated it. None of them ever got to that level again. And I told everybody last year that the reason why we needed to either trade up for CJ Stroud, which is what we should have done and would have done if I'd been the owner, or we needed to take Will Levis if he fell to us at 5, and we sure as shit needed to take Will Levis if he fell to us at 20. Because Geno was bound to decline. Bound to decline. So let's take a look. What did happen with Geno Smith? What did he do? What did he do last year compared to 2022? Well, when you get into it, it's really not very good. As you look at passer ratings, passer statistics, I don't consider yards to be important. Yards are a function of offensive schemes, and they're great if you're a fantasy player. They don't win football games. I have seen plenty of quarterbacks throw for 300 or 400 yards and lose games. They don't win games. Yards don't win games. Completion percentage. I've never seen a quarterback have a shit completion percentage and really win a game. It just doesn't work that way. So let's look at completion percentage. Wow. Okay, Geno Smith is 18th in completion percentage. It's not very good. What about touchdowns? Well, Geno was 17th in touchdowns. He had 20, one fewer than Sam Howell, who also had 21 interceptions. Geno had 9 interceptions, so he has about a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is average. 1-to-1 that Sam Howell has is catastrophic. 3-to-1 is what you need if you're going to be a great player. And then Geno's passer rating was 92.1. Okay. So how bad is that really? I mean, is it really fair to criticize Geno for that? That's not a bad season for 15 years. Yeah, it's not a bad season if you're a journeyman, average player, who doesn't really, you don't ever expect to be a Super Bowl winner. But let's compare it to 2022. In 2022, his completion percentage was 69.8, dropped to 64.7. So dropped 5 points. Yardage dropped off 42.82 to 36.24. Again, I don't think yards are that important, but a significant drop off. 30 touchdowns dropped to 20. 11 interceptions dropped to 9. That's an improvement, but he played 2 fewer games. Passer rating drops from 100.9 to 92.1. So let's be honest about Geno Smith. Geno dropped off by about 20 to 25%. His performance declined 20 to 25%. That's the reality of the situation. That's what I told you was going to happen. Now the question is, well, why can't Geno bounce back? Geno made a lot more throws than we ever thought he could make. He did way more than we ever thought he could do. He surprised the heck out of us um, with some of the stuff that he did in 2022, and he made some great throws. He made some great throws in 2022. He made some great throws in 2023. But let's take a look at um, at the history of NFL quarterbacks past the age of 30 who have career years. Let's take a look at it. So we're going to slide over here to another browser, over to our Explorer or whatever it is. Yeah, Explorer. So let's take a look at, no, what's it called now? Edge. Let's take a look at the average quarterbacks, the journeyman quarterbacks. Now, whenever I make this argument that no journeyman quarterback has ever come back significantly, people say, "Well, what about Rich Gannon?" Well, Rich Gannon had two pretty decent years. When John Gruden came to Oakland, he had a couple of years where he got some attention. He had 28 touchdowns, 24 touchdowns, 2000. That was all past the age of 30 in a very limited, efficient offense. But his career year was 2002 when Oakland went to the Super Bowl and then was completely exposed by John Gruden, who knew every single one of Rich Gannon's weaknesses. And he threw 6 interceptions in the Super Bowl. He turned into a pumpkin. He returned to the journeyman that he always was. Now, because of guys like Chris Mortensen, who were friends with Gannon, pushing him as the MVP, he won the MVP in 2002. That was a ridiculous MVP, almost as ridiculous as Steve McNair sharing the award. When you have a league with Brett Favre and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady at the height of their careers, and you're giving the MVP to Rich Gannon, it's a joke. In 2002, Gannon set career highs for completions, attempts, completion percentage was the highest it ever was, yards, and he had 26 touchdowns against only 10 interceptions. Previous year, he'd had 27 and 9, so he's a little bit better. Yards per game, 293, all career highs. His career year was 2002. After that, he dropped off the face of the earth and was out of football 3 years later. Let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at another guy. Let's take a look at Ryan Fitzpatrick and see what. Let me just double check to make sure I'm sharing here. Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Okay, let's take a look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he had a career year in 2018 in just a few games. Started 8 games, had 17 touchdowns against only against 12 interceptions, threw for 2,360 yards, and had a passer rating of 100.4, his career high. He was given a big fat contract by Miami to jump ship and go there. He did, never came close to those levels again. Had 20 touchdowns in 2019, but everything else dropped off. Out of football 4 years later. Let's go back even further. Let's go back and look at another journeyman quarterback. This is a guy named Earl Morrall, who you don't remember, but he was a player for the Baltimore Colts. And in the 1968 season, the Super Bowl III season where they lost to the Jets, he came out of nowhere at the age of 34 to have a spectacular year with 26 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, but back then that was considered average. Almost 3,000 yards in 15 games, led his team all the way to the Super Bowl, and was awarded the league MVP award. First team All Pro, Pro Bowl, AP MVP, and UPI MVP at the age of 34. Never came close to that level again. The most touchdowns he had after that was 11 touchdown passes. Completely dropped off the face of the earth. Um, Now let's look at the guy who I think is actually the poster boy for this, which is Randall Cunningham. Now, in 1998, Randall Cunningham was brought in to be the backup in Minnesota. Starting quarterback Brad Johnson got injured, and Randall Cunningham came on in 1998, which was Randy Moss's rookie year. He had Randy Moss, he had Chris Carter, he had Robert Smith running the ball. He had a 60.9% completion percentage, his career high, 3,704 yards. That was an acceptable career high back then. 34 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions, and a passer rating of 106, by far his career high. They'd signed him to a one-year deal. So what did the Vikings do? They gave him a huge contract. He was number 2 in the MVP voting, Offensive Player of the Year number 2, and went to the Pro Bowl. Had a spectacular year. Journeyman quarterback who'd been average before that in his long career, has a spectacular breakout season, and then drops off the face of the earth and out of football a few years later. It happens over and over and over again. And if you look at Geno Smith, you compare 2022 to 2023, you see the exact same pattern. Now, this is not just journeyman quarterbacks. If you look even at guys like Tom Brady's career year was 2007, the year he turned 30. 69% completion percentage, 4,860 yards, 50 touchdowns. The aforementioned Randy Moss. A 117.2 rate, AP MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Pro Bowl, blah, blah, blah. Never really came close to that again. Had some great years. Had a year where he threw 36 touchdown passes a couple times, and a year in 2021 where he threw 43. Had some great years. Super Bowl winning season for Tampa. But that was his peak. And he's a superstar, an elite quarterback. And while he was able to continue to play and play very well, his best year was 2007. Drew Brees had his best career year in like 2018, but was never able to repeat it. Brett Favre's career year was down below that. Let's take a look, if we can, at these overall stats. Let's stop sharing. Let's share again. Let's go to present slides. Ooh, I'm going to take it from my computer. If you look at these guys and compare them, what you will see, let's go to Seahawks blog stuff. I actually hate it's processing. But the point is that no other player has ever done this. Okay, I want to do that one. Let's show it. Maybe we're going to give up here. Okay, we're going to give up. The point being that, oh, there we go. Geno Smith is not a unicorn. Again, Rich Gannon, 37 years old, career year 2002, drops off after that. Randall Cunningham, 35 years old, career year 1998, drops off out of that. Ryan Fitzpatrick, career year 36, drops off after that. Earl Morrall, all journeyman quarterbacks, 34, career year, drops off after that. Even the stars, Steve Young at 33, Warren Moon at 34, Drew Brees, had their best seasons and never were able to get back to that past the age of 30. But they had a lot of good years because they're superstars. Tom Brady. They are superstars. And unfortunately, Geno Smith isn't. So what you have is a situation where you have a journeyman quarterback who had a career year, and the history of the NFL proves out that he will only decline from here. He will never get back to his 2022 levels. That's why it's imperative you draft a quarterback. Now, you're going to say, well, hey, you just said draft a quarterback, but you also just said none of them are going to be there. Well, there is one who's going to be there at 16 and probably be there in the mid 20s, although it's a risk. The Seahawks could trade down and they could take Spencer Rattler, who has all the skills that you need to be successful, Super Bowl level successful at the NFL, has a much higher ceiling than Geno Smith. I look at Spencer Rattler, and at a minimum, I think he's Baker Mayfield. You're looking at a guy who's at least Baker Mayfield. Now, who do you think has a better chance of leading his team to a Super Bowl victory, Baker Mayfield or Geno Smith? Baker Mayfield. And I think Rattler's ceiling is well beyond, not way beyond, but well beyond Baker Mayfield. So what I'm saying is, you take a position player, nothing's going to change. Doesn't matter how good the position player is. Nothing's going to change. So you're talking about, well, we've drafted all these position players, but now we're going to draft a star position player, a guard. I say, unless Penix is there, who I would take at 16, trade out of 16, see if you can get somebody like the Packers or the Cowboys to trade up with you for one of the tackles that they need and that's going to be there. Pick up a second round pick, and at 25, 26, 27, take Spencer Rattler. That's what you have to do if you're going to make the leap to the next level to be a serious contender. If the Seahawks do not do this, if they stay with Sam Howell and Geno Smith, they will not be, and mark my words here, serious. They will not be serious contenders for anything for a long time, and they will be chasing quarterbacks for the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully without John Schneider in charge. Because if he screws this up, if he goes through a third off season without investing a pick and a quarterback, he deserves to be fired because he's an idiot. Because we don't have one who's good enough to get us to the Super Bowl. All right, that's what I've got. Geno Smith is not a unicorn. Don't pretend that he is. Stop pretending. Stop thinking that he's going to be good enough. He's not. And the odds are he's going to continue to decline. If he doesn't decline, he could probably get back to last year's levels. If 20 touchdowns versus 9 interceptions is good enough for you when he's got DK Metcalf and Jackson and Jigba and Kenneth Walker and Tyler Lockett and Noah Fant and Jack Charbonnet and a bunch of offensive linemen on the team. If that's good enough for you, you're not a very ambitious fan. I only care about one thing: winning Super Bowls. That's all I care about. That's why I'm a fan. I want to win more Super Bowls. I want to get the ugly taste of Pete Carroll throwing the ball from the 2-yard line in Super Bowl 49 out of my mouth by winning another Super Bowl. And if they don't do something at quarterback now, this year, it's not going to happen. There's no guarantee that Rattler or Penix, if he's there, or even Caleb Williams, if he fell to 16. There's no guarantee that any of them are good enough, going to be good enough. I look at Caleb Williams, I see Cam Newton. All kinds of talent, no heart, no competitive nature. Not ever going to win you a Super Bowl. That's what I see. But I think it's the truth is, again, you convert 0% of the chances you never take. And let's face facts. Every draft pick is a chance that you're taking. Seahawks have blown plenty of top picks. Other people say, "Oh, well, if they'd have traded all those picks for CJ Stroud and he wasn't good, that they'd be screwed." No, they wouldn't. Come back in 2 or 3 years when you have picks again. You're only talking about Devon Witherspoon, Jackson Smith, Najigba. It's it's a long story. So I think really sorry about that interference. If they don't do something this year, we're screwed because there's no quarterbacks next year that they're going to be able to get that are worth taking. The last 2 years, there have been quarterbacks that they would have been able to get that they didn't take. This is the last year I think they have that option for a while. And if they don't do it, John Schneider's not going to be around in 2 years to try to find a quarterback. He shouldn't be. He should not be. He should be on the hot seat right now. Get this team a franchise quarterback because we've been without one for 2 years. And we've been very lucky that our backup has played pretty damn well. But our backup quarterback, Geno Smith, is not a unicorn. Sorry, that's the truth.